This is a Getty podcast.
Hi, I'm Lilit Sadoyan, the host of OM, our museum mindfulness meditation podcast. Welcome to this deeper dive where we explore the themes of our weekly episodes with experts ranging from paintings conservators to dance critics.
It's one of those things that you think of it's like thousands of years old. It's come in and out of favor a million times, and I think it always will.
This week, we meditated on our place in time and space, inspired by a medieval astrological diagram. I spoke with world-renowned astrologer Chani Nicholas about the history of astrology and how people use it today. Chani is the author of the book You Were Born for This, Astrology for Radical Self-Acceptance. She hosts the weekly podcast, Astrology of the Week Ahead with Chani Nicholas, and runs the Chani app. Now, let's dive in. Hi, Chani. I'm so honored that you're able to join our podcast today. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me.
Of course, our pleasure. So for our listeners who are new to the field, can you talk a little bit about what astrology is?
Yeah, astrology is the study of the quality of time that we're living through. It's the study of the cyclical nature of time, and it is rooted in our deep need to know what is going on with the sun and the moon and how to orient ourselves in time and space. If you think about our ancient ancestors, like way before the written word, way before any kind of thing that we would find in a museum, we have always needed to know how much light there's going to be. And so you'll notice the world over, peoples building seemingly impossible great wonders of the world that line up with astronomical events and happenings and cycles. Mm-hmm. Many of the temples around the world that are, again, seemingly impossible to have built, especially given the technology that they had at that time, or we don't even know some of the technologies they had to do the things they did, or we can only assume some of the technologies they had. But they erected these incredible things to line up with the moment of the solstice, or to line up with a certain rising of a planet, or to have some sort of connection to a planetary orbit or a celestial body's rhythms. You know, you can take out the kind of spiritual aspect of it, or even a philosophical aspect of it, and just like we needed to be rooted in time and space. And of course, in our modern age, we're very disconnected from the sky. We live in a tremendous amount of light pollution, and of course, like noise pollution, and a lot of distractions where we're looking down at an illuminated little box in our phones. But in fact, we used to look up a lot at the illumination in the sky. So astrology is an articulation of one of humanity's oldest relationships, which is with the natural world around us.
And presumably there have been people throughout time who have kept track of these cycles that you speak of, right? So we have probably millennia's worth of material that tracks the movement of planetary bodies and, you know, their impact on Earth. So I'm wondering why people, from professional astrologers to novices, why have people been so fascinated by what's going on in the sky?
Well, I think partly because of what I just said, partly because it is an ancient orientation, and because it is the nature of a human being to want to know if there's meaning behind the chaos. Life is chaotic, and it's really hard, and it's painful. And when things happen to us personally, it can help in our struggle to give it a more archetypal context. So human beings are generally searching for some kind of container to hold the things they struggle with in, so that we can gain a little bit of perspective or understand if there's some meaning to attribute to it. And I'm not here to say that all suffering has a meaning to it or a greater redemptive arc. Some of it, I think, is really just blatant and violent suffering. And there's a lot of it on the planet. And I don't look to the planets for all of that. Yeah. But there are some things that are, again, cyclical and developmental and part of just like the human journey that you can find context for inside of a system like astrology that has held that context for thousands of years. Mm-hmm. So we're looking for meaning. We're looking for a place. We're looking for a guide as well to see like, where should I go and what should I do? And, you know, astrology is not a religion. It is not religion. It's not therapy. But because astrology and religion have had this interplay throughout thousands of years, there's this way in which they have kind of like switched the dominance in certain cultures, and throughout time, they kind of like change hands. But we are always looking for a kind of meaning and what to do with this immense human struggle.
Yeah. How about more recently? I mean, I love what you said about the source of illumination from the phone versus the sky. More recently, how has our understanding and relationship to astrology changed?
I mean, our relationship to astrology changes every time there's a technological advancement. We expand our understanding of the universe every time technology advances. So whether that is the discovery of Neptune and Uranus and Pluto, whether that's the discovery of a minor planet like Chiron, whether that's the discovery of the 4 asteroids that were discovered pretty much all at the same time, Vesta, Pallas Athena, Juno, and Ceres, we kind of like start to add into the astrological paradigm these new planetary bodies. And then, of course, there's like a bajillion asteroids that are just flying around out there. So there's that piece of it where like our astrological system has to then start to like make room for these other bodies. But then, and so that changes the ways in which we're doing astrology. But then we also have technology helping to proliferate the actual tradition and practice of astrology here on Earth. Like the printing press proliferates the horoscope. Like we create the horoscope, the sun sign horoscope in tandem with, you know, the printing press really like doing its thing. And so then astrology can start to spread in a way that it never really had before, depending on like what civilization we're looking at and what time period. But in the time period where the printing press starts to get going, that's, you know, astrology had been really quiet for a long time. So then it comes back. And then, you know, we can look at the 60s and we can look at the ways in which astrology started to like, again, spread like wildfire through musicals and pop culture and hey, what's your sign? And that kind of thing. It's a little less related to technology, but still probably through the advent of like people buying records and people playing, you know, like really kind of having a different relationship to music, and also like Linda Goodman's sun sign book and all of that started to like really take root in people's conscious awareness. And then you look at social media, and social media is like, you know, astrology just everywhere. And astrology had always been used by capitalism. You know, astrology columns have been in magazines, again, since the printing press. And so it's been there and it's always been really popular. But, you know, with the advent of the internet did a certain thing too. And, you know, when I was growing up, people tried to teach us how to, you know, make an astrology chart by hand, by mathematics, of which I was never good at. And then, you know, when I was coming into the field, like when I was a teenager, I had to send away to somebody who had like a computer program and a printer. I just send them the birth times that I wanted and pay for them. And they would, like, 2 weeks later, I'd get their birth chart.
Wow.
And then, all of a sudden I could pull a birth chart online by myself. And then, then there's smartphones, and then it's just like, and then COVID comes, and then TikTok comes, and then everyone's sitting at home learning astrology, or a lot of people are. And then it just explodes. Like it's one of those things that, think of it, it's like thousands of years old. It's come in and out of favor a million times. And I think it always will. Like, I think it'll go out of favor again, and it'll come back in again if we continue life on this planet. But it does have it has that relationship with humans and with technologies, whatever technologies we're using, whether it's the cuneiform tablet, the papyrus, the, newspaper, TV, stage, screen, whatever.
And even apps, right?
Yeah, well, definitely apps.
And for our podcast episode this week, we discussed a 15th century German manuscript that has the different days of the week, the signs that are associated with them, what kinds of activities that one would engage in during different times of day. And so I wonder if we could talk a little bit about this in particular. And I would love to get your take on this period, how you understand this, and specifically, why do we associate certain signs with different days of the week?
So there's an order of the speed of the planets. And so the classical planets, right? And I'm talking planetary bodies, because obviously the sun and moon aren't planets. One's a sun, one's a moon, but we call them all planets. So considering the relative speed of all of the planets, they're always in an order. And that order is how we structure the planetary hours in a day. And so every day, and it depends on what language we're looking at, but they're either named after, like in French, it's like literally named after the planet, the days of the week. In English, they're named after gods that are associated with the planets that are connected to that day of the week. And so each day of the week is said to be good for something that's connected to the planet that rules it. And then within that day, every hour, there's a planet that rules that hour. And so the day of the week, say we're looking at Sunday, is the sun's day. And the first hour of Sunday will be ruled by the sun. And then it will go in order from there, and it'll just keep repeating. And so this is the thing about astrology, and is in a lot of ways you can see things as like a fractal kind of system, right? There's this like, okay, Sunday rules the sun. And then within that, we break it up into hours, and you'll find the sun's hour in the sun's day, which will be really good for sun things. And sun things are vitality, sun things are healing. The sun was thought to be part of the divine mind. The sun is that generative life force, right? So we want to do things. We want to wear gold. We want to, light a yellow candle. We want to do things that are reflective of the sun to invoke the sun spirit. And so the planetary days and the planetary hours are used for different purposes, but we can think of them as ways to align ourselves with the property of the day and the time that we are in. Or if you wanted to make like a magical amulet, or you wanted to start a project, you could pick the day that is ruled by the planet that rules the type of activity that you want to do. And then if you double down and pick the planetary hour that's also a part of that further imbues that thing with that property, right? Because magic and magical practices are always about aligning ourselves with the thing we're wanting to create more of.
Yeah. It sounds like there's a great deal of awareness of being in sync with planetary and zodiacal cycles. There's this really keen awareness of how to live one's life according to those, to, like you said, make the most of the moment or find an auspicious moment in time.
Yeah, and I even know like astrologers that will, because you can have like I have a planetary, the planetary hours, like you can just go on a website now. and just get whatever it is. So right now we're like in Jupiter's day. So Jupiter's day is going to be good for matters of justice and fairness and also like creating some kind of openness or harmony or goodness. But we're also in Mars's hour. And so I was looking at it and I was like, oh, it's too bad we didn't start a little bit earlier because we could have got Jupiter's hour and Jupiter's day. Jupiter is the planet of, he's also the teacher, right? So it's like, has that vibe to it. So we have an overall feeling of Jupiter-ness, of wisdom and of teaching and of also creating goodness and expansion. But I know astrologers that will have the software just running and they'll just like every once in a while look up and be like, oh, interesting. Like it just crossed over into a Venus hour and my partner texted me, or, you know, like there's connections. And so you can, I think, you know, it's very in the weeds, to be honest, for a lot of people. I don't look at planetary days and hours that much. I'll notice them, but it's not like I am obsessed with them. But I know astrologers that are, and I think it's a really beautiful and very like obsessive way almost. But that is magic. You know, magic, you are being very particular, you're being very specific, and you're being very intentional.
It seems to me like the manuscript is the medieval equivalent of that, right? It's like, this is what's best at this time of day on this day.
It's a prescription. Yes. And also, you know, there's different ways you use astrology, right? Like you can pull your own chart. You can also go to an astrologer and ask a question. And if you ask me a question, then there's a chart for that question. And then I look at the chart for the answer to your question. And I can look at the planetary day and hour of which you asked me that question. And that will give me a level of information.
You have been referencing charts. Can you please talk a little bit about what a birth chart is?
Yeah, it is that. It is like, okay, someone's born at this time, at this location, what's happening in the sky? And so it is a exact kind of replica of where all of the planets and the angles, I could say, like the mathematical equations of the highest point and the lowest point and the horizon is in the sky. And so we lay that out on a piece of paper, which is, you know, flattening the cosmos. So it's like an interpretation of how everything was oriented in the cosmos as it appears to us here on Earth. And then from that, we create a understanding, or we try to, I always say, and this is kind of like a convoluted thing to say, but it's really important not to read into the chart. It's really important to read out of it. And that's a concept that I got from an acting teacher, or many acting teachers. You know, like acting teachers will always say, don't read into the script. Like, don't read into the character. Stop projecting all of your own assumptions into this character. Read out of it. What is it, like, how is it coming out, instead of being like always putting your ideas into everything. And so when I say like don't read into, let the chart come to you, it's like really looking at it from a perspective of, well, what's the condition? Like, what is the condition of this planet? How fast was it moving? Was it visible? Would it have been visible within 7 days of the person's birth? What place is it in? Does it like that place? Does it struggle in that place? Like, what is it trying to tell you? Instead of this more kind of modern pop culture approach of assuming you understand something about the nature of somebody's astrology or that moment because somebody in your past did something that was horrible to you and they had the same sun sign. Like there's actual calculations, and each thing in the chart is this really kind of like complicated equation that we have to work out. And then once we get all of that in order, then we can see, okay, well, what's the potential of this landscape? And then you have to be like, okay, well, then that person has to choose how they're going to use it and what they're going to do with it. And how they're going to work with the tools they've been given and with the circumstances that they're in. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. And it has me thinking about, how someone can use their birth chart to find meaning in their life or to align with their life's purpose.
Yeah, I think it's really important. We in our app, in the Chani app, we try to really focus on your rising sign and the planet that rules your rising sign and the location of your sun and your moon. I have a book, it's called You Were Born for This, The Astrology of Radical Self-Acceptance, and that's what that book is about. Because that is the entry point. It's not everything, but if you don't get that piece, then I think we're kind of just like a little lost. And we might bump into things that are meaningful and like, oh yeah, that sounds like me. But it's not actually going to give us the domain that we're in. The planet that's connected to the rising sign, which is the sign that is rising up over the eastern horizon in the location that you were born, the moment that you were born. Very specific, fast moving. The sky is always moving. So that sign is always changing every couple hours, but the degree of that sign is really important as well. And so that sign has a planet that's connected to it.
Right.
And that planet is going to tell you something essential about the nature of the direction you need to go in this lifetime. And the quality of that planet, the function of that planet is going to tell you something very specific about the function of your life. And if we don't start there, then I don't that's that holds. If you just get one thing, that's what I want you to get. Yes, your sun and moon are wildly important. They're the luminaries. They're literally the places of life in the chart. The sun is your essential self, your divine mind, the spark of life, your vitality. The moon is your body, your history, your lineage. A lot of people say like emotional life, your sense of security. So the sun is like the soul and the moon is like the body that holds that spirit. And so without sun and moon in the chart, we don't have a person.
Right.
And so where they are is also so immense and important. But if we don't understand the quality of the rising sign, that is to say, the moment you said yes to being here, the moment you became your own person, the moment the body that you were incubated in, expels you, you go out into the world on your own. That's what the rising sign tells us, the motivation for living your life. And then the planet that rules that is like, and then we go here. That's the first through line that we want to get. At the same time as understanding the sun and moon and what they're doing and how they're working. So if you just understand, honestly, I know a lot of people get a lot of confirmation from the kind of personality traits of the signs that their sun and moon and rising sign is, and that's great. But it's not going to give you necessarily direction. And what's going to give you direction is understanding where those things are. Where is your sun? Where is your moon? Where is the ruler of your ascendant? Those are going to give you the literal locations that you need to be in. And then who else is there and who's influencing it and, all the things that means. But, the barrier to entry it can be significant. So if you just start really simply with those things, you'll get a lot of direction in a really practical way, I think.
In so much as astrology is a mirror of what is happening down here on Earth, is there such a thing as being out of phase with the cosmological order?
Out of phase, like out of sync?
Yeah, like we're talking so much about being in alignment with your purpose or your, the ruler of your ascendant sign. And
I think that's the aim of capitalism. The opposite is capitalism. The opposite is be so distracted by all of these ways in which corporations want to make you feel insecure, that you never listen to yourself, so that you never spend time in a museum looking at art and contemplating history so that you never think about the meaning of your desires and what they might be telling you, then you're out of sync. And the astrology chart is something that can, like, snap you back into awareness again. It can wake you up and remind you of, like, wait a minute, why do I have this desire? Is that my desire? Or is that what the world is telling me is the ultimate thing to achieve? Like, why do women spend the majority of their life energy wondering if they're too fat, or if they're looking too old, or if they're attractive enough? Well, that's just by design. That's just a distraction. So if you're, overwhelmed by feelings and desires that you're like, have I ever questioned if these are mine, and they're not making you happy, and you're not feeling like you're getting somewhere deep and wonderful and transformative in your life, then it's time to question, like, where is this coming from? Is this me? Or is this the air, the soup, that I'm swimming in?
Yeah. It really brings you back to the here and now.
Yeah. Or something needs to. Whether that's astrology or not is, that only you can know that. But anything you can do to take the gaze from looking out to looking in, not at your navel, but just like to attune yourself to something deeper that's happening in you.
Chani, this has been incredibly informative. So if people want to learn more, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me on my app, Chani, the Chani app, Chani. You can also find me online. Chronically, I am there, unfortunately, but I'm on Instagram and TikTok and Threads and Blue Sky mainly. And also we have a blog, we have a website, it's chani.com. And there's tons of really helpful articles that our team writes all the time there to help you understand your life, your chart, its potential, and what to do with it.
For sure. I can vouch for the app. Life-changing. Thank you so
much for having me.
Thank you, Chani.
Yeah.
To find the related meditation and see images, transcripts, and additional resources, visit our website at getty.edu/om. That's OMMM.